All Cooper CPAs, located in the heart of East Nashville, offer a wide variety of tax services for individuals and businesses. Contact them at 615-257-0646 and visit their website, allcooper.com, for a full list of services.
From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Williams. And coming up next on Political Soup with Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester, we're going to talk about the national debt, the fiscal cliff. Did we really avoid it? Al Gore is a sellout, but the Al Jazerra and the Boy Scouts have found a defender they probably didn't expect. All that and more coming up next on Political Soup.
Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show. Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Political Soup. I'm Joe Williams, along with Crom Carmichael and the returning Chip Forrester.
Thank you.
Do we pick on him now for being able to take that great trip over the holidays, or do we let him slide?
Well,
give me a break, guys.
Okay.
I'm nice and
Okay.
relaxed. Just got my energy back, and so let's have some fun.
Man walks in talking about being on the beach, and then you talk about having been to South Beach. So I'm sitting here stuck in the middle having to work.
yes, well, that's
Someone's
the way it
gotta earn a
goes.
living.
That's right.
Shade boy, I got news for you, partner. Some things ain't happening. Some things do happen, gentlemen. We got a deal anyway on the fiscal cliff. I mean, we got a package. You know, my taxes only went up, what, 5.8% instead of 30-something%.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, the best description of the resolution is it was bad but could have been worse.
And we didn't go over the cliff.
And that's what I'm saying. It could have been worse. If we had gone over the cliff, that would have been worse. But the resolution, how they ended up with, is bad.
Now, you say we didn't go over the cliff. Is it a matter that we didn't go over the cliff, or we just didn't go far enough that we've hit bottom yet? We slowed the fall down.
Well, that's certainly what people are talking about. We just kicked this can down the road a little bit. We've still got more to deal with. But the important thing is that we did come up with a solution, at least temporary. Maybe it's a Band-Aid. But we didn't go over the cliff. I think it would have had negative repercussions on the economy if we had. Carm, what do you think?
Well, I think that it would have been, the repercussions would have been worse if we'd gone over the cliff, but what was resolved is not going to be good for the economy. It's just going to be more, I think, more of the same. We're going to have very, very slow growth. We may even have some negative months, because when you take that much money out of the private sector, and especially when you take that much money out of the sector that is in the small business area, you've got the most rapidly growing companies are now going to be paying a lot more in taxes than they were, which means they have less resources to expand their business and create new jobs because they just simply don't have the money to do it. Then you're going to have Obamacare that begins to kick in next year, and you already see how companies are trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do to take care of that. And then, frankly, you've still got this huge deficit that is looming over everything.
Well, that's what they're going to wrangle with. I mean, that's the really tough piece of business over the next 60 days. And actually, the debt ceiling, I think we reach it February 15th. So, you know, a month and a half from now.
And I guess, at least for most of us in the general public, the big battle year before last that we almost shut down the government over the limit is kind of what really kicked everybody into going, okay, exactly what's going on. Guys, we're right back there again.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I would argue that not everybody is, I mean, we're not anywhere near close to being on the same page.
Right.
In this last deal, taxes went up dramatically. And in fact, what's interesting is that the taxes went up the most on the middle class, because the reinstatement of the 2% Social Security tax is going to hit people making $50,000, $1,000. And if they're a two-income family and they're making $100,000, it's going to hit them for $2,000. It will raise more tax revenue than the rest of the tax rate increase by far, maybe even 2 or 3 times as much, because people who are well, here's what's interesting. If you live in California and you are self-employed, and if you are wealthy and you already have $1 million of unearned income, you're now in the 71% tax bracket in California. I think a lot of those people will decide to leave California
we
to
talked
avoid
about that last time.
to avoid
Come
the
to
13,
Tennessee,
and I
yeah.
think they'll come to Tennessee. I think we'll get a lot of them.
Is there a way to simplify just what kind of shape we're in?
Well, let's take a look. We've got a pretty good show.
All right, let's take a look. The first slide, 2 slides for you today. This is what we call simplified, but basically the tax revenues, 100,000 million, billion, trillion, 2.17 trillion, but the budget's 3.82
trillion. Isn't that amazing? $1 trillion you can't get your mind around.
Right.
No, you really can't.
No,
I mean,
it's hard to count all those zeros.
Yeah,
That's right. You look at the debt, you look at the national debt, you look at the budget cuts.
Look at this. Now, how are we going to make this simpler to understand? Well, it's easy. You start taking away some zeros.
Yep.
It's the same numbers, just divided equally. A family income of $21,700, but you're spending $38,200. I got to be honest, fellas, I don't know anybody who can do that.
Right, and by the way, this is not the average family. Average family income is higher than this, but
Right.
this is if the federal government, taking away zeros, if the federal government were a family,
That's what it would look like.
that's what it would look like. And so pop that back up if you would. It's because it's fascinating. It's spending $38,000. You've got $16,000 of new money put on the credit card in 1 year. Adding up now, the balance on your credit card is $142,000. And how much did they cut? $38.50. This is not a solution.
I agree.
Yep.
No, it's the object of the show. You disagree. But that's a good thing. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, and the other thing too is it's important. We're mixing a couple sort of metaphors here of apples and oranges. I mean, the debt ceiling is one issue that we're going to face that Republicans and some of the sort of ideologically right-wing Republicans have tied to this whole debate. And really, I mean, George Bush raised the debt ceiling 7 times. Ronald Reagan raised it 18 times. It was never an issue. And what's disturbing about that discussion, which we saw in 2011, is that the sort of the value of the American commitment to fidelity and honor about our debt goes out the window with these right-wing ideological Republicans who are holding this hostage in the debt debate. We need to separate those, and we need to have a discussion about the debt. That's certainly true. The president's willing to do that, but we don't need to tie it to the debt ceiling issue that's going to come up in February.
Well, I would disagree with Chip on that because the president says he's serious about spending cuts until he's asked to name one. And you saw it, 38.
He put Social Security, he put Medicare, he's offered those, and it's Congress's responsibility, constitutional responsibility to come up with a budget, not the president. You said that last time. Yeah. It's their job, and then the president assigns the authorization.
So here's what I think is going to happen over the next 90 days. You have 2 different issues. Well, you have 3 things. You have the debt ceiling.
Right.
You have the sequestration that comes up within 60 days, and that's $1 trillion spread out over 10 years. And then you have the budget. Now, the House, since the Republicans took over the House, has passed a budget every year. The Senate has not passed a budget. The Democrats control the Senate. And so, Chip, I agree with you. It is time for the Democrats in the Senate to step up and do their job and pass a budget. John Boehner has said within the next 90 days, the House will pass a budget. And then he says if the Senate won't pass a budget, the burden is on them because the president cannot sign a budget that the Senate doesn't pass.
I understand, but the budget that the House of Representatives puts up kept the taxes for the 1% richest people in our country at the same amount. And the president said he wasn't going to sign something like that. So they want the Republicans who control the House want their cake and eat it too. They're not willing to meet the president halfway and make some of the spending cuts as well as the tax cuts. The other thing too that we need to look at in this whole process is our tax code. It's a mess. The tax breaks for corporations that pay nothing, that all needs to be on the table in this discussion. Republicans are unwilling to do that.
And I believe that over the next 90 days,
Republicans
will pass a budget that includes entitlement reform. It may or may not include tax reform. I hope it does. And it will attack some of these cronyism issues.
Well,
now we'll see what the Senate does, because it is the Senate for 4 years that has refused to even pass a budget. And so we have no idea. No U.S. senator in 4 years has had to vote up or down on a budget in the Senate. And Boehner has said the House will pass a budget, And if the Senate won't pass a budget, then it's up to the president to lead his own party in the Senate to pass something, so that at least the American people know what the U.S. senators stand for.
Good point.
And the fourth issue here, and I'm going to throw this in as the common man from the street, because this is just, that's where I sit. I mean, that's what I am. I'm a poor guy. But, you know.
Well, not that Crom and I are all that rich.
Well, I understand.
Unless I don't know something about Crom.
I'm somewhere in the, you know, the 99%, you know, at the bottom of that list. But two things, and you mentioned tax reform. It is time. We need to just throw out what we've got and start all over. I mean, if you've got to have a book like this to figure out who gets what break and where it goes, that's a whole nother, you know, that's at that point it has become unwieldy, unenforceable, and everything that we do now continues to add regulations to that, some of which are nothing more than the same regulation that's been passed 4 times under a different name that's already there.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you have hedge fund managers who are paying less in taxes than the secretaries who work for them, that's a problem. And Warren Buffett said that. I mean, Warren Buffett said, I should be paying more taxes than my secretary, and he's not.
Well, Warren Buffett is a political opportunist, and so he's
one of the most successful businessmen in our country.
And he is a political opportunist.
Well, he's not running for anything.
Well, he's a political opportunist. He says what he says because he doesn't want liberals to attack him as a wealthy guy. So he says, I ought to pay more taxes. Chip, it's real simple. If Warren Buffett wants to pay more taxes, all he has to do is write a check.
Well,
they'll take it. Now, wait a minute, Chip. All he has to do is write a check. But here's what he says. He says, I'll be willing to pay more taxes if people making $250,000 pay more taxes. Well, let me tell you something. There's a lot of difference between somebody making $250,000 running a small business and somebody worth $50 billion. They're just not even close to the same.
We're splitting hairs here.
No. That's exactly what Warren Buffett says. The guy making $250,000 is just like me. I'm sorry. A guy with $50 billion is not like that. It's different. So he needs to stroke a check for about $20 billion. And you know what? He won't even miss it. He'll still have 30, but he won't do that. And by the way, this tax code didn't change a thing.
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. Well, this is what Obama wanted. What passed the Senate, let's remember, this passed the Senate.
This is not what the president wanted. This is what they thought they could get to avoid the fiscal cliff at the last minute. The president had put tax reform on the table all along. He put Medicare, Social Security on the table for discussion. It was just a matter of, it was minutes before we were going over that cliff.
All right, ding, we ring the bell. He gets the last word, first segment. Good job, Chip.
Thanks, Joe.
He'd been watching everybody going, hey, we're running out of time on this segment. He knew when to get in there. That's cold, I'm kidding.
Oh, having fun.
Coming up in the second segment, we're going to continue this discussion, but in a little bit of a different light. I wonder what that means. You'll just have to stay tuned to find out. Stay with us here on Political Soup.
If you're looking to learn guitar, check out Dave Isaac's Guitar Studio on Music Row. Whether you are a beginner or hobbyist, to professional songwriter or artist, Dave offers a unique and powerful method of instruction that teaches not just the instrument, but the whole musician. Find out more at NashvilleGuitarGuru.com.
And welcome back, everybody, to Political Soup. Joe Williams, along with Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester. And gentlemen, we spent the first segment talking a lot about the new tax code and changes and fiscal cliffs and budgets and all this stuff.
Debt ceiling.
Debt ceilings. Want to run a little bit of a different direction here. In our tease, we talked about Al Gore being a sellout. That was kind of rough, and it was meant to do what it did, but he has. Al Gore has now sold Current TV to Al Jazerra. Al Jazerra. I mean, it's like selling it to a small piece of Al Qaeda. Perception superseding reality. Right. Not saying that's what happened. I do have a question, though, about this, and it reverts back to that discussion that we were having earlier about taxes, et cetera. One of the things that former Vice President Gore said had to happen, this thing had to close December 31st, on or before, simply because there were new tax issues coming up starting January 1. So here's my question for you guys. Does that make Al Gore a very good businessman or a hypocrite?
I think it makes him a good businessman. And I don't want to speak for the vice president in terms of why he made a business decision as a major participant in
perception superseding reality.
Right. But this is a deal between two media companies, and Current TV has been on the cutting edge of integrating social media into the news process. Al Jazerra is a company out of Qatar, I believe it's out of Qatar, that owned by that government that's looking to expand its reach with bureaus all over the world. And I think the vice president, like any good businessman, knew what was coming with taxes and made a decision.
Current TV had 22,000 viewers a night on average. It was generating $100 million because Al Gore would go around to the major moguls of the cable industry and said, you need to carry Current TV, and you need to charge your subscribers a dime a month. So that's exactly what they did. And so you had 49 million, some 100,000 who never saw the thing, never watched it, but they had to pay for it because the cable companies charged it so they could give it to Current TV. And what did they get in exchange? They were never criticized in front of Congress about Current TV. Never, because they were carrying it. So it's a pretty nice little clever deal. You have Al Capone, Al Gore, Al Jazerra. You have all three of them all begin with Al. It's the protection racket. Now, as for Al Jazerra, it's not owned by the government. It's owned by the emir. He's the dictator. What's fascinating about this thing is, first of all, Al Gore is a good businessman, and he's also a hypocrite because he's the one who, like all the other Democrats, say people ought to pay more taxes, but he raced to get it closed so that he wouldn't have to pay more taxes. That's number one.
Well, let me just add, to defend him, there are other investors, other participants in that in that company.
Then we'll see if Al writes a check for the difference. We'll see if he writes a check for the difference. And if he doesn't,
you can't ask. It's like asking Warren Buffett to write a check for more taxes if he wants to pay more taxes. Everybody plays by a set of rules, and when those rules are given to you, you're going to make good business decisions based on those rules. You can want to change them, but those are one of the issues that's always frustrated me about politics is the unlimited amount of money that goes into it. Those are the rules we play by. I don't like it in politics any more than anybody else, but if you're going to be a candidate, you got to raise money and be effective. Those are the rules that Al Gore was playing by. You can't call him a hypocrite for following those like every other.
Well, how about this one?
And I don't know all the details about
the emir has the $500 million because of what? Fossil fuels. They produce fossil fuels. They produce oil. Al Gore says that the fossil fuels are destroying the planet. Al Gore says we're selling to Al Jazerra because we share their values. There's a shared value here. So here you have a guy who's made billions of dollars producing fossil fuels, selling to a guy who says fossil fuels are destroying the planet. I'm sorry, Chip. Al Gore is a pure opportunist. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm simply saying that if he says everybody ought to pay higher taxes and then he races so he can pay lower taxes, if he sells out to somebody selling creating fossil fuels and then condemns fossil fuels, then hops on his own private jet and flies around with the biggest carbon footprint imaginable, I'm sorry, the guy is a phony. Now, he might be a very wealthy phony, but he's still a phony. At the end of the day, all these things that he says are so important, he goes exactly the opposite direction. Bless his heart. Bless his heart.
I'm going to jump in kind of, again, perception potentially superseding the reality of the situation. We can only go by what we see. That's what's perceived.
The other truth on it is that Al Gore and a couple of other people started Current TV. It was a dynamic way to communicate and convey news, and you got to give them credit for that. And to ask anybody to play by a different set of rules just because you think they should is not fair and equitable.
If they think everybody else ought to play by.
No,
here's what's interesting.
No. I'm sure the vice president would like to see the tax code changed. I'm sure he's talked about that before.
Especially now.
And I mean the tax code changed and it be done in a way where we get rid of these loopholes. But until it is a fair, until we do get it done, he's going to live by the same set of rules that you and I all live by. And I think that's where you're being unfair.
Well, what's fascinating is Channel 5 Plus has more viewers than Al Jazerra.
Well, I'm not an expert on all that.
Now, is Channel 5 Plus worth $500 million? No. Current TV is worth $500 million because Al Gore convinced all these cable companies to charge their subscribers and to pay for something that they don't watch.
I'm not an expert on the media in that area, so you're just saying something that I can't necessarily refute. But I don't.
Time Warner canceled the contract the next day because in their contract it said that if there's a change of control, they have a right to cancel. So 10 million viewers or households disappeared the next day. And I'm going to bet that
Well,
over
the
the
mayor
next,
must be upset about that.
he probably is a little upset.
Well, and hey,
It was all cash deal.
in fairness on the charging a dime thing, I mean, that leaves current TV no different than probably 492 other channels that sit on your cable
you
and
don't watch.
and dish satellite TV now that you don't watch. You're still paying the dime a month. I mean, in fairness, that's the business model.
Yeah, but I don't think it works out to nearly as much as current TV was receiving in relationship to the number of viewers.
You're just mad that he made a lot of money, Crom. That's all. That Al Gore, our hometown boy, is doing well for himself. And,
it doesn't trouble me in the least when somebody does well.
Yeah.
It does trouble me when they do well at the expense of others, and people don't watch his network. Now, he did sell out of it at a good time, and I hope that and so here's the question, Chip. If he now says we need higher taxes, what do you think about that? What do you think, somebody who's just avoided paying higher taxes, if he calls for higher taxes?
He is, along with the president, along with Bill Clinton and others, called for reforming the tax code. He's talked about that for years. He's talked about it. The fact that the government couldn't get it together is not his responsibility to do it, and he did a straightforward business, decision to use the tax code to his business's advantage, which every business does and should do.
Does it trouble you that he sold to essentially a dictator who produces oil?
I don't know all the intricacies of how Al Jazerra is owned, and there's all sorts of stuff going over in the Middle East that's troublesome.
Last comment.
Oh, I'll leave it at that.
He's
We're good.
All right, because I get the last one in the third segment. That will wrap up segment 2. Vice President Gore, sorry, you just kind of got caught in the middle on this one. Tell you what, we've got more political soup coming up. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Boy Scouts who got an unexpected defender in the Ninth Circuit Court. We'll tell you about that and more when we come back on Political Soup.
Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short track door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com.
And welcome back, everybody, to Political Soup. We go into segment number 3 with Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester. Gentlemen, interesting court case has come out of the southern part of California, the San Diego area, decided by the Ninth Circuit Court out there, which has a reputation as being extremely, extremely liberal. In my mind, sometimes to the point that you got to be kidding me. Surprised to see a case finally done. Barnes-Wallace versus the Boy Scouts of America. Crom, the background.
Well, I'm not sure if it was versus the Boy Scouts or versus San Diego.
Okay, Boy Scouts of San Diego.
Because San Diego, as a city, was leasing property to the Boy Scouts, and they then conducted the Boy Scouts and they paid a market rate. And
No,
then
they did. It was $1 a year.
Oh, it was $1 a year.
Yeah, it was just it was
but
a
then
sweetheart deal.
But then what they did was they
Since
conducted.
1950.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's been going on now for 60 years.
Right.
But
and they do a bunch of activities on the property, exercise programs, a bunch of things like this.
And they were required to make capital improvements to the tune
They
of
were.
about $1.7 million.
Okay.
Okay, so the Boy Scouts did pay for that.
Yes.
Okay, they paid for the capital improvements, and they did all these Boy Scout activities on the property, and then these two families sued, claiming that the Boy Scouts were a religious organization because they made you take the oath where you believed in God, and then I think also it had the anti-gay part of the Boy Scouts where the Boy Scouts
Correct.
says that the Scout leaders cannot be gay. And so this was what they sued over, claiming discrimination. And the Ninth Circuit sided with the Boy Scouts or with the city of San Diego, which, by the way, the city of San Diego had already settled.
Yeah.
They had already paid $1 million and settled so that they could get out of it. The Boy Scouts continued to battle, so that's why it appears that as if it was the Boy Scouts that was the defendant. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that the left regularly complains that the right is intolerant. They just say the right-wing people are just intolerant. Well, what is tolerance? Tolerance is when you accept the fact that other people don't agree with you and have different values than you do, and the left says you must tolerate mine. My question is, does the left have any obligation, therefore, to tolerate the right's point of views on things.
Well, I think it's more complex than that. And the other issue is that, you know, celebrating diversity is important in our country, and the fact that the Boy Scouts sort of discriminate against the LGBT community. 100 years ago, if you were African American, you couldn't be a Boy Scout. That's changed. 100 years from now, hopefully, if you're gay or LGBT, you can be a Boy Scout. If they had embraced that celebration of diversity, we wouldn't be facing this lawsuit. We wouldn't have had to go through this at all. And that's the fundamental problem with what the Boy Scouts' position.
Well, there were two parts of it, and the other was that they make people take, in the Boy Scout oath, you have to profess a belief in God. Now, once again, if atheists think that Christians, for example, have to accept atheists and atheism, then that's freedom of that's why don't atheists have to accept the fact that there are others who disagree with them?
Well, they do.
They sue them and say, you're not going to
Well, because they were using city property, and that was the basis of the suit. I mean, they wouldn't have had grounds to sue the Boy Scouts or the city had they not been had the sweetheart deal for city property to do the training. That gave them the grounds for the lawsuit.
But I'm talking about tolerance. The left says you must be tolerant of me. You people on the right must be tolerant of me.
They are tolerant. It was just about using, I mean, the left doesn't do anything to the Boy Scouts. We don't.
Well, now, wait a minute. The gay issue then. What about the tolerance there? Why doesn't the left acknowledge that if they want the right to be tolerant of them, shouldn't the left be tolerant of the right?
They should. The point is the Boy Scouts were using city land.
This is if they use private land. In other areas, they sue. They claim discrimination.
And I come back to I get your point. I come back to the fact though that diversity and the celebration of diversity in our country is important. And the Boy Scouts discriminate against LGBT or gay people when they should be embracing them. There's no we've done it in the military. We've demonstrated that is not an issue to be worried about in terms of having gays in the Boy Scouts. And yet they prohibit someone who's openly gay to participate. Although there's all sorts of other stories about what's going on with the Boy Scouts that's not openly gay. We can talk about that on another show.
Well, but at the end of the day, what you're saying is that the right should be tolerant of the left, but the left can use the courts when they believe that when they don't want to be tolerant of the right, they want to use the courts.
No,
and because they say that you ought to celebrate me.
Crom, they were using that the lawsuit was based on the fact
they
were
lawsuit.
using city. No one's suing the Boy Scouts. The left's not suing the Boy Scouts. There's nothing like that going on.
The left sued the Boy Scouts for years over the God issue and over the gay issue.
Yeah.
They sued them for years, and they sued them not having to do with public property or anything else. They would sue them every chance they get.
Well, I'm not an expert on all of that.
Yeah, they would sue them. But the point I'm trying to make is this: why don't they just tolerate them? Why don't they just tolerate them? Why sue them?
Well, why not touch?
No. Why? No. Don't answer a question with a question. It's a simple question. Why doesn't the left just tolerate the Boy Scouts? It's a private organization. Why not leave them alone?
Well, they do, except when they're using city land, and that's what the lawsuit is all about. And I'm not familiar with all the other suits that.
So if they sue them, in private court without private land, that then is okay. I mean, that would bother you if the left doesn't tolerate.
Let me just sort of flip it around. Why are you so concerned about about the issue of why the Boy Scouts are discriminating? Why not? Why do we even have to? This wouldn't even be on the table if everybody could just celebrate their diversity and be who they were. Why do you want to?
Because I think that freedom of association and tolerance has to run both ways. Years ago, when the gay community came into Nashville and had the Gay World Series softball tournament. Mm-hmm. The media in this town thought there were going to be demonstrations and all this other kind of stuff. They came in, they had a great time, they had a great tournament. They crowned the winner and they left. Mm-hmm. Now, they openly discriminated against anybody who wasn't gay in participating in that tournament. They said, you cannot participate if you're not gay. I believe that they have the right to do so under freedom of association.
Well, so it's sort of like you'd like to be a member of the Black Caucus.
So
in the legislature.
I'd love to be a member of the Black Caucus. And Steve Cohen, by the way, tried to be. And the first time they threw him out because he wasn't black.
Stacey Campfield tried to also.
Okay, well, but the question, what I'm trying to say is that the gay community openly discriminated, and they said we have a right to associate with who we want to, and I happen to agree with that. But then the gay community says that other people don't have the right to associate or disassociate with who they want to. They call that discrimination. And I'm sorry, I think freedom of association implies that you have the right to be with who you want to or not be with who you want to. And the gay community proves that because they have their own events and they have a perfect right to do so. And I am completely tolerant of that.
Okay. You good with that?
I'm good with that.
He's good with that. I get the final word, and that word is we're late. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Political Soup. For Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester, I'm Joe Williams. See you next time right here on Talkopolis.